Hello and a very warm welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Americas. Here's what's coming up for you in the programme. As the US gears up to vote for its new president, we take you behind the scenes as the Republican nominee Donald Trump drums up some last-minute support. The first South American pope turns diplomat as the pontiff plays an increasingly important role in bringing about peace across the continent. And we have a special report from our UN correspondents in New York, as the global organisation's own expert finds that their response to the cholera outbreak in Haiti has been disgraceful. But first we begin with the race that's grabbing the headlines and of course everyone's attention across the United States, and that's the race for the White House. Currently trailing behind his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton in national polls, the Republican nominee Donald Trump has seen his bid for the White House blackened by allegations of sexual misconduct, tax fraud, and his comments on immigration. But the business mogul has brushed off criticism to keep his presidential bid afloat. Our colleagues from our sister channel France 2 were out and about with Trump as the countdown begins to polling day. This is their report.
Presidential candidates know that having appealing ideas and an impressive delivery is only half the battle. They need the press to help disseminate their message. Every day, some 30 journalists are invited to follow Republican nominee Donald Trump on the campaign trail. Their Boeing 737 travels behind the billionaire candidate's personal jet. The planes are central to the Trump campaign's efficiency.
Trump all the way!
The day's first meeting takes place here at West Palm Beach, Florida. Spirits are high, despite the latest scandal.
No matter what you say about women, you don't mind?
No, because it's the news that's blowing it out of proportion.
Here, the media presence is almost part of the show. Journalists who have to stay in designated areas are repeatedly booed and jeered at by the crowd. People here admire Trump for his anti-establishment rhetoric.
These attacks are orchestrated by the Clintons and their media allies. The only thing Hillary Clinton has going for herself is the press. Without the press, she is absolutely zero.
After 50 minutes on stage, Trump's off to his next engagement, one of 3 more scheduled for the day. It's back to the road, where each of the 9 cars in Trump's convoy contains 4 or 5 armed men. The route has been entirely cleared of traffic to make sure Trump sticks to his schedule. With just 2 weeks to go till the election, it's a race against the clock. Trump is slipping behind his Democratic rival in the polls, but his supporters insist official predictions don't reflect the enthusiasm of the endless crowds, like this one in Columbus, Ohio, that hang on Trump's every word.
Let's turn our attention to South America now, where the Roman Catholic Church has long had a huge following. That's more true today than ever, as the Argentinian-born Pope becomes more actively involved in peace agreements in several countries across the region. Alex Orcott reports on the growing diplomatic role of the pontiff.
During the political crisis in Venezuela, the signing of an historic peace agreement in Colombia, and the encouragement of a thaw in relations between the US and Cuba, Latin America remains at the heart of Vatican diplomacy. It's hardly surprising, as half the world's Catholics live there. So when tensions rose in Caracas, the opposition and the government looked to the Holy See for mediation. On Monday, President Nicolas Maduro left the country to seek counsel from Pope Francis.
Meeting the Pope feels like a miracle from God. We had to pass through Rome. We made a call. The Pope answered. We spoke in private. The meeting was very fruitful. I'm leaving blessed, and I bring blessings for the people of Venezuela.
The presence of the Catholic Church was also given great importance in Colombia, as the government and the FARC signed the historic peace deal that was later rejected by referendum. To mark the occasion, the presidents of Chile, Peru, Panama, and the then UN Secretary-General of the UN all joined for Mass.
We'll fight together to ensure our country is one family in which no one feels alone or excluded. And for that, we praise the Lord.
Oremos al Señor.
The symbolic importance of Catholicism remains strong, even if, with the exception of Mexico, there has been a downturn in followers across the region, a trend partly caused by the rise of evangelism. As well as using its strength, the Vatican has also shown the importance of discretion. As an example, it has managed to maintain diplomatic relations with Cuba throughout Castro's revolution. The local church is and remains the main non-state organization tolerated on the island.
Next, disgraceful. That's the word chosen by the UN's own expert to describe the international body's response to the cholera outbreak in Haiti. Special Rapporteur Philip Alston presented his scathing report to the General Assembly on Tuesday, calling on the UN to better accept responsibility. The outbreak started there in 2010 and has now killed almost 10,000 people and left 800,000 others sick. Our correspondent Jessica Lemazurier has more now from New York.
This is the UN's Watergate. That's how Special Rapporteur for the United Nations Philip Alston has described the UN's failure to accept responsibility for bringing cholera to Haiti. He's on his way to the UN headquarters to present his report, which calls for the UN to say sorry to the victims and pay them compensation.
The response of the United Nations has been disgraceful. I think it brings discredit upon the organization. I think it makes it much more difficult for the UN to insist on holding governments to account for human rights violations when it is refusing to be held accountable itself.
For 6 years, the UN denied the outbreak began at one of its bases in Haiti, but scientific evidence proved irrefutable. In August 2016, the UN announced for the first time that it would provide compensation to victims as part of a $400 million cholera response. But raising the money is looking next to impossible, and Haitians want more than cash. They want an apology from the Secretary-General.
He said that the United Nations has a moral responsibility to help the people of Haiti deal with the consequences of the cholera outbreak.
Sure, but doesn't he have a moral responsibility to apologise?
I think that that question is one that you should ask not only the Secretary-General, but also two other groups of people. One is the people who provide legal advice here in the United Nations, and the second is our member states who have a big interest in this.
Big interests. Professor Alston says the US, the main contributor to the UN's peacekeeping budget, is thwarting those calling for accountability, fearing it could lead to endless lawsuits. He argues that this rationale does not apply to the UN, as it has immunity in national courts.
My concern is that it puts the UN in a very bad light. If whenever these major disasters occur, the UN is directly responsible, and it says yes, but we're not going to admit anything.
Professor Alston says coming clean on cholera is essential if the UN wants to salvage its damaged reputation.
Well, meanwhile, the UN has a rather unusual new flag bearer as Wonder Woman celebrated her 75th birthday. She was named as the international body's new honorary ambassador for the empowerment of women and girls. But it's a choice that hasn't gone down well with everyone, as the cartoon hero was officially nominated at a ceremony in New York. Some 50 members of UN staff protested outside their HQ, while others inside turned their backs to the stage and raised their fists in outrage. And finally, when you think of Mount Rushmore, you'll probably think of the 4 presidents' faces carved into the granite staring out over the valley. But did you know that the mountain also stands on a Native American reserve? The tribespeople there have made a new sculpture to their own ancestor, and this one's on an even bigger scale.
In the Black Hills of South Dakota, an enigmatic face has appeared. Standing at more than 170 meters tall, the sculpture is in the form of Crazy Horse, the 19th century Native American warrior. Construction started in 1948, and progress has been slow.
It took 2 years to carve his mouth. His nose is 27 feet high.
Almost 70 years to sculpt only the face, while a few kilometers away the famous Mount Rushmore was carved in just 14 years, in the honor of 4 US presidents. But this monument angers many Native Americans. It was illegally constructed on sacred land belonging to them. An 1868 treaty has been almost entirely ignored.
The state of South Dakota decided to come and build this other sculpture and in their ancestral lands, and it didn't have anything to do with honoring them, the people that land came from, and which is why Chief Henry Standing Bear said, hey, wait a minute, let's do something for our people in honoring that culture.
The chiefs turned to Polish-American sculptor Korczak Ziolkowski to help with their mission. All on his own, he set about carving the world's tallest sculpture. The first job was to build a massive stairway to carry his materials.
Down I'd go again. One day I did that 9 times. You know, that gets awful old. Oh, I tell you, that walk up and down there was terrible.
His wife and 10 children went with him on the adventure. Progress was painfully slow, but he refused to break his promise to the Indians. The children have now taken the baton. Monique is in charge of the construction site and has inherited the determination of her father.
Dad used to say that the mountain came first, Mother came second, and we came third.
Then what do you think of that?
But for me coming third, I got more love than most kids ever did.
The road ahead is still very long. The entire body and horse still need to be carved.
We have about 7 feet right here to take off, and then we're at finished grade, and 4 feet on the backside. All that's going to be removed by hand, by a lot of drilling, and then removing the blocks, about 2 feet by 3 foot blocks.
A tourist site helps to finance the work. The Ziolkowski family is determined to construct it alone, without the help of public funding.
I don't think it'll be in my few years.
It's kind of insane, but it's doable, what one man's determination has started.
When finished, the statue will dwarf Mount Rushmore, but for now no completion date has been set. Support for the work is not unanimous among Native Americans, with some believing it's wrong to carve out the sacred Black Hills.
Well, that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Inside the Americas. Next week, we have a special programme dedicated to the White House race. Do stay with us here on France 24. There's more news and headlines coming up.